Sarah's uncle Henry gave her $12,000 when she graduated from college in 2012. It was a life-changing gift, more money than Sarah had ever seen in one place. Her uncle, a man who had weathered multiple economic cycles and viewed the stock market as little more than a sophisticated casino, sat her down and offered a single ironclad piece of advice. Sarah, this is your foundation. Put it somewhere where the wolves can't get to it. Don't gamble it on tech stocks or whatever the trend of the week is. Just keep it safe for a rainy day or the day you're ready to buy your first home. Sarah took those words as gospel. To her, that $12,000 wasn't just cash. It was a physical manifestation of her uncle's love and the shield against an unpredictable future. She went to the community bank where her family had held accounts for 3 generations, a solid brick-and-mortar institution that felt as permanent as the earth itself, and opened the standard savings account. She deposited the full $12,000. For the next 13 years, she followed the plan perfectly. She never dipped into it, she never used it to fund a vacation or a new wardrobe. Every few months, she would log into her banking app, see the balance, and feel a profound wave of security. She watched the interest payments trickle in. At an annual percentage yield of 0.08%, the growth was almost imperceptible. Some months it was 80 cents, other months, after the compounding kicked in, it might reach a dollar and change. By the end of each year, the account had grown by maybe $10. Sarah didn't mind the slow pace. She wasn't looking for a thrill. She was looking for safety. In her mind, the money was there. It was FDIC insured. It was liquid, and most importantly, it was protected from the risky world of investing. For over a decade, Sarah felt like the most prudent person in her social circle. While her friends were panicking over market corrections or the latest crypto crash, Sarah's $12,000 remained a constant, immovable rock. Then, in early 2025, Sarah decided it was finally time to use the gift. Her old sedan was nearing the 200,000-mile mark, and she needed a reliable vehicle for her growing commute. She went to a local dealership, found a well-maintained 3-year-old Toyota RAV4, and prepared to make a substantial down payment using her uncle's gift. The price for the used SUV was $28,500. Sarah felt a sudden cold weight in her stomach. She vividly remembered looking at this exact same model back in 2012, right after she graduated. At that time, a 3-year-old version of that SUV, in similar condition with similar mileage, would have cost roughly $16,500. She pulled up her bank balance, expecting 13 years of safe accumulation to have provided a significant cushion. The balance on her screen read $12,125. 13 years of discipline, 13 years of prudence, and 13 years of loyalty to her bank had added exactly $125 to her principal. But the car that her $12,000 could have almost entirely paid for in 2012 now required an additional $16,000 just to drive off the lot. Sarah's money hadn't grown. It had effectively withered away while she wasn't looking. The world around her had become drastically more expensive, while her safe dollars had remained stagnant. Standing on that dealership floor, doing the math for the first time in her life, Sarah realized something that made her heart sink. Her money hadn't been sitting safely in a vault. It had been slowly, silently dying. The number on the screen stayed the same, but the purchasing power, the actual work that money could perform in the real world, had collapsed by nearly 38%. Her safe money was a melting ice cube disguised as a solid brick, and the bank had been more than happy to let her hold it until it was almost gone. My name is Bobby, and I spend far too much time thinking about why the most comfortable financial decisions are often the most destructive. If you have a large amount of cash sitting in a traditional savings account because you want to keep it safe, you are currently participating in a system designed to harvest your wealth. If you check your balance and feel comforted by a number that never drops, you are falling for a psychological illusion that is costing you your future. If you believe avoiding the market is the cautious choice, you need to hear what I have to say. What I am about to show you is how inflation silently erases your labor every single day, why your bank is the primary beneficiary of your fear, and why the money you think you are saving is actually disappearing. I call it the savings account illusion, and it is the most expensive lie in the world of personal finance. To understand why Sarah is effectively $10,000 poorer today than she was in 2012, we have to start with a fundamental truth about currency. A dollar is not a unit of value, it is a unit of purchasing power. And purchasing power is under constant, predictable, and relentless attack by a force called inflation. When most people look at their savings, they think in nominal terms. This is the face value of the money. Sarah saw $12,000, and she was satisfied because the number didn't go down. But nominal value is a complete mirage. What actually matters for your life and your freedom is real value, what those dollars can actually buy in the marketplace. Real value is determined by the quantity of dollars in your pocket and the cost of the things those dollars must eventually purchase. Between 2012 and 2025, the cumulative inflation in the United States was approximately 38%. This means that something that cost $100 in 2012 cost roughly $138 in 2025. To look at it from the other side, a dollar in 2025 only bought what 72 cents could buy back when Sarah graduated. Sarah's $12,000 wasn't $12,000. In terms of 2012 utility, her account was actually worth about $8,700. She had lost over $3,300 in real wealth, not through a market crash, but through the simple act of doing nothing. The savings account didn't protect her. It provided a comfortable room for her wealth to starve to death. This is the secret that most people miss. The interest rate on a standard savings account is not a reward, it is a distraction. The average bank pays you 0.08% or 0.4% specifically so you won't notice that inflation is taking 3%, 5%, or 7%. The gap between what your money earns and what inflation takes is your real return. And for a traditional savings account, that real return is consistently deeply negative. You aren't earning a tiny bit of interest, you are paying a massive inflation tax every single year you stay in cash. Let's look at the math over a longer horizon, because the compounding nature of this loss is what makes it genuinely devastating for your retirement. Imagine you have $100,000 sitting in a safe account, earning 0.5%, while inflation runs at a moderate average of 4% annually. After just 1 year, your balance shows $105,100. You feel okay, but your real purchasing power has dropped to $96,500. You've lost $3,500 in value, the equivalent of a high-end laptop or a week-long vacation, gone, evaporated into the gap. After 5 years, your balance shows $102,525. You might even feel like you've made a little profit, but your real value is now approximately $83,800. You have lost 16% of your life's work. After 10 years, your balance is $105,114, but your real value is $70,000. You have lost nearly a third of everything you thought you were protecting. If you leave that $100,000 in that safe room for 20 years, the math becomes a financial funeral. Your balance will be $110,489. But in terms of what that money can actually buy, you are down to $50,000. You have lost half of your money. You haven't had a single bad day in the market. You haven't picked a single losing stock. You just watched the number on a screen and felt safe while the economy liquidated half of your life's effort. And here's where it gets really interesting. The bank that held Sarah's money for 13 years wasn't just storing it passively in a dark room. They were using it as the fuel for their own massive profits. The moment Sarah deposited that $12,000, the bank moved it. They lent it out to a couple down the street for a mortgage at 6.5%. They lent it to a small business at 9%. They used it to back credit card balances at 22%. The bank took Sarah's money, for which they paid her roughly $10 a year, and they generated hundreds of dollars in profit from it every single year. A typical bank earns a net interest margin of 3 to 4%. This is the spread between what they pay you and what they earn on your money. On Sarah's $12,000, the bank likely earned about $450 per year while they paid her $10. Over 13 years, the bank generated nearly $6,000 in gross profit from her deposit, while Sarah lost over $3,300 in purchasing power. She effectively subsidized the bank's expansion while her own wealth decayed. This isn't a conspiracy, it's just how the banking business works, and it only works because most people never look past the nominal balance. The psychological trap at the heart of this is the confusion between nominal safety and real safety. A savings account provides nominal safety. Your balance won't drop. This feels good because our brains are hardwired to fear visible losses far more than invisible ones. Behavioral economists call this loss aversion. Seeing your investment portfolio drop from $100,000 to $85,000 during a market downturn feels like a physical punch to the gut. It's a red number. It's a smaller balance. It triggers a fight or flight response. But watching your savings account stay at $100,000 while its purchasing power drops to $85,000 feels like nothing. The number is the same. There is no alarm, there is no red text, but the outcome is identical. You have lost $15,000 in real value. The only difference is that the stock market makes its losses visible, which allows you to react, while the savings account makes its losses invisible, which lulls you into decades of inaction. Both are losses, but only one feels like a loss. And ironically, the one that feels safer is the one that mathematically guarantees you will lose, while the one that feels dangerous is the only one that historically builds wealth. Over the last century, the S&P 500 has returned an average of about 10% annually. Even after you subtract inflation, you're looking at a real return of roughly 7%. Savings accounts over that same century have consistently failed to even match inflation. The safe choice is actually a slow-motion disaster. Now, I know some of you are thinking about high-yield savings accounts. You're earning 4 or 5% right now at an online bank, and you feel like this doesn't apply to you. And you're partially right. A high-yield account is infinitely better than a traditional one. If inflation is 3.5% and you're earning 4.5%, you are actually making a positive real return of 1%. Your money is growing, which is a massive win compared to the slow bleed Sarah experienced. If you need to keep cash for a short-term goal, a high-yield account is the only place it should be. But there are two massive caveats to relying on high-yield cash for your long-term wealth. First, those 5% rates are not permanent. They exist right now because the Federal Reserve raised interest rates to fight inflation. When the economy cools and the Fed lowers rates, which they always eventually do, those 5% yields will vanish. They will drop to 3%, then 2%, then 0.5%. You cannot build a 20-year retirement plan on a rate that can be cut by a committee in Washington at any time. Second, even at 5%, you are still being left behind by productive assets. An index fund with a 7% real return will double your purchasing power every 10 years. A high-yield account with a 1% real return will take 72 years to do the same. If you have $100,000 that you don't need for a decade, putting it in an HYSA instead of a diversified stock portfolio is a safety tax that could cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars. 10 years in HYSA, $110,460 in purchasing power. 10 years in an index fund, $196,700 in purchasing power. The safety of the high-yield account cost you $86,000 in potential freedom. That is the hidden price of playing it too safe. So how should you actually think about cash? Cash is a tool for liquidity, not a vehicle for growth. You need it for three very specific purposes: the emergency buffer, the short-term goal, and the psychological anchor. You need an emergency fund that covers 3 to 6 months of your total expenses. This is the money that keeps you from being forced to sell your stocks during a market crash. It's your insurance policy. You don't care if it beats inflation. You only care that it is liquid and available when your car breaks down or you lose your job. You also need cash for any major purchase you plan to make in the next 2 to 3 years: a house down payment, a wedding, or a new vehicle. The stock market is too volatile for a 3-year window. You are willing to pay the inflation tax on that money for the certainty that the full nominal amount will be there when you need to write the check. And finally, you might need a small psychological buffer. If having an extra $10,000 in cash is what allows you to keep the rest of your money invested in the market without panicking, then that $10,000 is serving a purpose. It's a management fee for your own emotions. But beyond those three categories, every single dollar you hold in cash is a dollar that is dying. If you have $100,000 in a savings account, but your emergency fund and short-term goals only require $40,000, you have $60,000 of lazy money that is being systematically harvested by inflation and the bank. Here's the framework I want you to use to escape the savings account illusion. First, calculate your safety ceiling. Look at your actual monthly outflows, rent, food, insurance, utilities, and multiply that number by 6. If you spend $4,000 a month, your safety ceiling is $24,000. Write that number down. Anything in your bank account above that number is currently being wasted. Second, ensure your safety ceiling is actually working. If your emergency fund is currently sitting in a big-name bank earning 0.1%, move it today. High-yield accounts at online banks offer rates that are 10 to 40 times higher than traditional banks. It takes 15 minutes to set up, and it's the easiest financial win you will ever get. Stop giving the bank a free loan. Third, take the excess, the lazy money, above your safety ceiling and move it into a brokerage account. If you're scared of the market, don't try to pick individual stocks. Just buy the whole market through a low-cost index fund. You are betting on the collective ingenuity of the world's most profitable companies. Historically, that has been the best bet in human history. Fourth, you have to create a new default. The reason the savings account illusion is so effective is because it's the path of least resistance. Doing nothing results in your money sitting in your checking or savings account. You have to automate the escape. Set up a recurring transfer so that every month a portion of your income goes directly into your investments. Don't wait until the end of the month to see what's left. Pay your future self first, before inflation has a chance to take its cut. Right now, you probably see yourself as someone who is being responsible. You're avoiding the gamble of the market. You're protecting what you've worked hard to earn. That identity feels mature and prudent. But I want you to look at your bank balance one more time. I want you to see it for what it truly is, a bucket with a small, invisible hole in the bottom. Every day, a few drops of value leak out. Every time the price of bread goes up, every time rent increases, every time the cost of a car rises, that hole gets a little bit bigger. The stock market is risky in the short term. We all know that. We see the headlines. But the savings account is risky in the long term. It is a guaranteed slow-motion disaster that only looks like safety because the red numbers aren't visible on the screen. Sarah's Uncle Henry thought he was protecting her. He thought he was giving her a foundation for her life. But because he didn't understand the difference between nominal safety and real safety, he unknowingly handed her a melting ice cube. Don't let your wealth melt away. Stop focusing on the number and start focusing on the power behind the number. Understand what your money is actually doing and have the courage to put it to work even when the safe path is screaming for you to stay put. I've spent way too much time thinking about these hidden financial traps, so you don't have to. If this video changed how you see that safe balance in your savings account, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the math of your life. I'll see you in the next one.